So again, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A, not the comments. So we'll take some time to look through those at the end of our webinar. And I believe we can get started. It's already 7:02 in Berlin, where I'm located. Welcome to our webinar, Localization Industry Outlook 2023, Planning, Breaking Molds, and Adopting Trends Early. We hope today will be a really interesting conversation between me and my co-host, where we discuss some trends for the upcoming year, or the year to come, rather. And some new ideas that you could perhaps use within your localization teams or within your company in order to scale, grow, and find new technologies. So I'd like to present our co-host, Loc legend, Jan Hinrichs. He is the CEO and founder of Beluga Linguistics. So with many, many years of experience in the industry. And in addition to that, I believe 7 years ago, he founded Loc World, which many of you probably, or not LocLunch, sorry, which many of you probably know. It's a worldwide community. And I know Jan will have the opportunity to tell us more about his awesome community coming up soon. So welcome, Jan, and thank you so much for taking part in our webinar today. And I'm very excited to chat with you today on all our exciting topics.
Thank you very much, Loie, and great. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks. And a little bit about myself. I'm Loie. I'm the head of content at Smartcat. I also have been working in the translation and localization industry for numerous years. Starting as a localization manager, a translator, and eventually found a passion for writing about translations and localization. So very exciting also to be part of this webinar with you today. We'd like to start our webinar by first giving an agenda of what's going to be running, what's going to be happening. So I've already shared some housekeeping with you. We have a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the Q&A section of the webinar, and we'll answer those questions at the end. I will also be sharing some insights from our localization industry report and sort of setting the stage for the conversation that Jan and I will be having. After that, we'll be diving into the conversation and first talking about emerging trends in the localization industry and what you can what could potentially happen in 2023. So that will be increasing volumes, hybrid workflows, AI, and other technologies, and sort of topics that kind of fall into those categories. And finally, we'll be giving you some tangible tips to take away from this webinar in order to get your team future-proof and future-ready, your localization teams, so that you have sort of like the skill set, the tool set you'll need to go forward in the coming year.
Okay.
Perfect. So a few weeks ago, Smartcat was able to do a survey. We'll publish the findings of a survey, which interviewed or surveyed around 145 different enterprises that covered 80 different countries, and with a total budget, localization budget of $300 million per year. So we definitely got a lot of insights from companies who had a lot of translation and localization needs worldwide, and these enterprises definitely had lots to share with us. So one of the findings we saw is that the need for translations is growing continuously and exponentially. 45% of respondents reported that report translation contents into 1 to 5 different languages. 67% of respondents plan to increase the number of languages in 2023. And 80, I can't see the number there, 80% say that they use quality as a metric in measuring success. So from these companies, you can really see that quality is one of the driving factors in the localization efforts. We also asked some of these companies, the 145 companies, which attribute is most important to them when they're taking care of translations and in their translation efforts. You can see that 35%, the response was translation quality, followed by scalability of translator resources and process and communication between teams, as well as contracting invoices and paying translators as well. So this was very interesting findings for us. One of the findings we also saw was that translation budgets, while they increased for some time, at some point it plateaued. However, the need for translations has continued to grow exponentially since then. So the localization teams are sort of faced with a dilemma or a challenge as to how they can continue to scale and grow internationally with the budget they have at hand. So they need to find new solutions and ideas in order to grow. And another great finding we found from the survey is that a lot of companies have noticed a gap in the linguistic supply chain, meaning that they have not been able to work as closely with freelancers as they might have wanted to directly, or translators as they wanted to directly. But when having done so in the past, they experienced higher quality when they were able to connect with them directly. So 52% said that working directly with translators allowed them to have very good results. And when they weren't able to work with translators directly, they still had good results, but seemingly the consensus was the quality was a lot better when working directly with translators. So that's kind of a telltale sign of where the industry will be going next year. However, there's still a lot of challenges that the localization teams are facing in the year to come. And I hope now that we can dive into the conversation with Jan in order to discuss what some of these solutions might be and trends that teams can be prepared for moving forward. So Jan.
Yes, interesting. Looks like you could say maybe LSPs are out of business as a solution, because if working with translators directly would be, you know, the holy grail, which definitely, you know, it's the closer the communication is, the better and nicer it is. Now, if the conclusion is, hey, let's become in-house localization agencies, translation agencies, maybe we're not, there's no room for LSPs anymore. And that would be really sad after my 14 years or 16 years now in the industry to say goodbye to something. And, you know, I think that to touch base on this first point in your charts, though it's very tentative to think that working directly with translators solves all the problems. It means to take a decision, and those who have been in business, you know, we know that opportunity costs is a big thing. So when you become an inside LSP to handle large volumes, you know, you're not doing your core business. So if you're a software company or a product company or whatever, and you build a huge department of in-house resources to manage directly or even translate directly, then it can become an opportunity cost, and it can derive you from your core business. So hybrid models. I think this is where we have been talking about a lot, what we have been seeing in the past, working directly with translators. And you know, we have an industry where the LSPs, where we have a task separation between those who, you know, the content producers, companies, and people management companies like Beluga, who we deal with the large workforce behind 30 languages or 50 languages. And if we talk about quality, how do you make sure that these 50 people or 100 people or whoever work well and motivated? So bring this into an insights model is hardly scalable. And from my personal experience at the companies where I've been working before, is doomed to break. So we need to find like smart solutions to work on it.
Exactly. And I know that the industry report highlights not only the fact that working directly with translators, but it's working with translators and agencies together. So it's finding ways to collaborate, work together with different, as you say, with different possible structures than maybe have been explored previously. So there seems to be sort of a gap in that companies want to work with both. They want to collaborate with both. So they want to find a way to collaborate, together with agencies as well as with translators. So I definitely don't think that LSPs have a place to go. They definitely have a very central place in the industry. Just, the knowledge that in itself, the technology knowledge, also regarding like the technical terms, the technical side of translations. It's not something that people can instantly learn, let's say, from one day to the next. You need lots of, you need to know where the translation industry has been and the progress that has been made. And that takes a lot of time to dive into those technologies, those resources, and all the best practices that exist and that enterprises or companies can't really learn. And they could definitely work together with agencies and LSPs in order to, take that knowledge and run with it and work together collaboratively.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, if we look on the trends, what we have seen in the last few years is this massive adoption of TMS. So let's say that buyers have got so we moved online, we moved cloud in the last decades, like from 2010 to 2020. We have created this whole industry around like TMS. I mean, there were TMS before, but real adoption started in around 2008, 2009, 2010, and then onwards. And now this maturity, the market maturity, has come from software early adopters, so software companies that needed a way leaner approach to managing ongoing translations, continuous translations, as Smartcat named it very, very lean some years ago. So continuous translation has been adopted through technology platforms like Smartcat and the other TMS we have in the market. I think the fear and the power these companies have in the market has made many more people like aware of it. So we're bridging out of software into like all kinds of other companies and players who lost their fear about moving to a cloud-based lean approach. So this is for me the past. This is more or less I would say in maturity today. Now, and connectors. Connectors were a big topic in the last 5 years. Maybe. Yeah. So how can we, in this big or smaller companies, all the software tools we have in the companies we serve and the companies we run, how can we get this content into one single workflow with a single translation management tool? So there was this race around connectors for the last few years, and I think we have reached a pretty decent omnipresent connectivity situation, APIs and so on. So let's say the technology part has reached some maturity, and now we need to go to what I feel is the current situation. It's people management. So motivation. translators, communication between translators, LSP project managers on the LSP side, on the client side, communication with stakeholders, in-country specialists, and adapting to these new structures, these powerful structures we are right now seeing. So, but it's all mainly around, human communication.
Exactly.
So I think this is it's a major trend upcoming from now on, to put our view on how human relations can benefit our departments, our localization project, to become more empowered and to be considered in the whole enterprise as a revenue driving entity.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As we've seen after you said in the pandemic, there was this huge sort of race to be digital first. But in the midst of that race, maybe we forgot the human side on the way there. So we saw that there was a huge knowledge gap that existed in the various markets, where while the software might have been there and the connectors, they kind of forgot that maybe not everybody could catch up at that speed that companies necessarily wanted. And so I think it's good to take a second to also realize the user is at the center of it, and you need to make it also people friendly, but also in a technology that's going to, like as you say, bring people together and in one spot, maybe in order to like drive progress together rather than in competition, maybe. So how LSPs and translators, as well as companies, project managers, linguists, whatever, that everybody can work together seamlessly and have the same sort of knowledge base, but be empowered with technology at the same level. And in that topic, we're talking also sometimes about AI, and that's sometimes and machine translation and machine learning. That's kind of a touchy topic that also falls in this topic of technology, and how it's perceived differently by the different players in the industry, and how that can also empower everybody in their own way. But let's say translators, or those LSPs or other companies who maybe aren't in touch with that yet, how that can also help them sort of grow at the same speed, let's say. What do you think about that?
Right. Technology is a tool, so it's nothing without the humans who are behind that. And so one of the trends we have seen, in our industry for a long time, was industrialization of translation industry. So in order to grow our companies, as an LSP, to grow our companies, we wanted to have volume. Now, the more volume, the better. But with more volume, we separate, or we have a major problem, which is human. So if I want to scale, how can I be not depending on somebody in the workflow? So what happens if somebody gets out of the workflow? So we invented the translation memory, consistency, because one person could more or less control their consistency and so on. Mm-hmm. But this doesn't work if you have 10,000 words a day, or 15 or 20 or whatever. So you need large teams. And basically what we have created in the last decades is an industry where the individual doesn't count much. Because technology took over. And with technology, we believed we can scale to multi-billion-dollar companies, and we have done so. So there are a lot of those companies out there. But and now we get back to what's continuous translation, these day-to-day operations. So you do not, in like 80% of all cases in all companies we work for, like mid-sized companies, not the Googles, the Microsofts, and so on, but the normal companies that roll out like 10 languages, 15 languages, have around whatever, somewhere between 200 and maybe like 5,000 employees. you know, they have normally a volume which is manageable by a few translators per language. So, and what we need here are translators who are, you know, committed to these projects. We want motivation. So what we do not want is, even if we have translation memories and so on, content comes in from so many sources that the translation teams need to have a very good understanding of the product and the company and the culture. So all these soft values, we can't simply work with, you know, AI or, you know, whatever. We need to manage people, and these people are people, so to humans, and
Obviously.
humans, we have all our crazinesses.
Yeah.
So, you know, and this is one of the parts where we now go again. I think we go away from this industrialization of localization, where translators are commodities and they feel as commodities. And, you know, this is not sustainable.
No.
As well as we talk about food chain sustainability, we can't talk about, you know, mass translation farming and treat the translator as if he was just another machine, which is cheap to have.
Irreplaceable. Yeah. No, that's definitely true. And I feel like, you know, that ties into a lot of the topics about working directly with these translators, because they are, you know, valuable, knowledge rich individuals that can, you know, bring a lot to the table that, you know, if you weren't working with them directly or did not include them in the projects, you know, you'd be missing out on all that knowledge. A lot of the translators have realized in order to, you know, work and to be successful in this industry, you need to have a specialization. You can't be a generalist. And if you are able to get super niche into your topic, you're also a thought leader in that topic. And you're reading so much documentation every day that, you know, not collaborating with them would mean like you'd be missing out, I believe. And we have a really cool topic here, a little comment. It's from Sonia Baldras. She says, let's design a process where LSPs can manage projects and translators, but still put translators in direct contact with customers. So I believe, you know, in order for the translator and for the freelance linguists to become better, they need to be involved in the projects and be empowered. And yeah, I think you have a specific use case around this topic. I know you wanted to bring it up about how, you know, that could possibly look and potentially be a cool way for companies, LSPs, and freelancers translators to work, you know, a new way of working. Absolutely.
Yeah, we talked about these smart teams on client side and working together with the stakeholders, the outside world, like LSPs or directly with the translators. So, you know, and here is technology coming in. And when we had Log from Home, Semir from InfoBip already presented one of the projects we have been involved with, where I have been designing a process together with Semir, who said, I can better handle direct first level support to the translators, you know, because all these strings, out of context strings, if it runs through you, you know, you will ask me and we lose time. Now, one of the other parts we as an LSP take care of is the payment stuff. You know, it's always, we're only looking at the translation part. Well, the life of an LSP is not only translation, but managing freelancers on a large scale for our clients, that they can just concentrate on the translation part, right? Now, so accounting is a very interesting and important part of organizing our work. Now, Smartcat, and this is something you have created together with the marketplace, is direct payment systems. So InfoBip decided to, you know, make use of these tools that today technology enables them to manage quite directly translators,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still like one part which they feel like it's overhead, which is, selection of people. How do we find the right people? Where comes trust in it? Am I, as a client, as an end client, and a PM at an end client, trustworthy enough to find the right people, good professional people who will be on board for a long time? Or would this be something an LSP can handle for us? And this is what we do in this special, setup we have created. So our part is a pure human resource part. We select translators for Infobit. Infobit pays directly. They respond to all the questions out there, and we make sure that the teams working are first of all always there and available, and if not, that we have a substitute, trained substitute. We train, we select, we help mitigate in case of problems. And and this is just another way of working for a client who has a capacity and wants to have this ownership. And I think this is something new we haven't had before. Before it was the LSP who had the TMS, who had the cloud translators, and so on. Now, this reduces cost very significantly for us, but also as we don't have this burden, we can give it along to the client. This is still a very small project in terms of languages, in terms of translators. And it's to be seen how scalable this is to 10 languages, 20 languages, and so on, right? But at least we have the opportunity and the possibility to do these things. And I think this is very promising.
Yeah, I agree that one of the biggest pain points of companies is sourcing linguists and freelancers, translators, and finding really the right people for the job, and also that will continue to deliver high quality translations on an ongoing basis. And personally speaking, as I worked as a localization manager, we always had a turnover and always dealing with availability and task management. And so getting to the translation itself and making sure like the translations are there and on time is one thing. But if you have to, in addition, take care of like the human resources and them hiring and testing, that can also be very cost intensive. And often the companies use internal staff in order to check the tests of these translators to make sure that they could be suitable for the job. But these in-house individuals are not necessarily, don't have can't look at everything in terms of style, grammar, the innuendos of the different, the language. So that's why somebody like an LSP, like Beluga, it's great that you can take care of that, take that off the shoulders of companies.
And this is actually part of our job in this project. So to do quality control on a systematic level, ongoing, for management to, to understand, is this good? Is this bad? Do we have increases? And so our system is like, we train, we tailor the teams. So we train, we track. In terms of LQA metrics, we track them. We understand where there's problems. We can train them specifically and tailor the team if it's not working out.
Yeah.
So I think this 3 T's model is something that is helpful.
What are the 3 T's? Can you repeat them?
3 T's. Train, track, tailor. Track, train, tailor.
Yeah, tracking is important, in terms of reporting on quality, and then using those reports in order to assess and to improve where improvements are needed.
Exactly.
Maybe we can. Sorry, go ahead.
I think there's this quality slide you have put up in front of. So everybody wants to have great quality, but our quality, and here I'm citing Renato Berminato, Nancy, you know, in the sense of, can we, if we want to control quality in a traditional way, we put a review on top, a proofreader, and you know, whatever. So we have a long tail project. This was invented as part of this industrialization of translation. Okay, so low cost, first level input, you know, which is substituted by machine translation partly. And then we put a review on it, and then a proofreader, and so long stuff. So basically what we see in our day-to-day is, first of all, projects needs to be not black and white. It's always you know, colorful. So some, depending on the asset, you have one workflow, and then you have a different workflow for different assets, maybe higher impact or whatever. So to manage all these qualities, this system, you need some structural approaches, and LSPs like us, you know, this is our daily bread, sort of. So, and this is normally nothing what an in-house team should be focusing on, at least not in the day-to-day business, but getting and analyzing results, and internal linguists, if you have the luck to have, you know, these internal linguists, send them out to the markets, collaborate with the markets, do some very specific localization work with these in-house people who have a much higher impact and understanding of the company than any outside party. So I think this is very important to understand that when we move, and this is a trend I see. So hybrid mode is cool, but it must be smart.
Okay.
If it's not smart, that everybody understands which position they have, and that we as like LSPs have this orchestra system. So we empower people, translators and stakeholders on the client side, to enable communication flows, and to have them empowered, and also feeling the ownership, you know, of debating terminology, of bringing in insights, market insights, whatever, you know. Those people, our translators, our linguists, have a lot of knowledge we do not source at this moment, because we put them into small boxes, source text, target text, and that's it. And that is probably where machine translation comes in and said, hey, I can do the same, right? But that is not what we need in our industry.
Yeah, and I guess that comes into the topic of machine translation and quality and AI. I think there's, you know, it's finding the balance and knowing how to use machine translation, automatic translation. But as you say, like making sure we have other processes in place, such as LQA and gray communication lines, so that we can, you know, increase scale, increase and grow, but we never, you know, we don't really lose that human side of it, because, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, it depends, there's different varying levels of, you know, of seeing what is quality, let's say, and what kind of quality each target audience or each group or product might need. But in the end of the day, we do need to have that human side, always reviewing the context, and making sure that it's, you know, always for the right environment, I guess you could say. And if there's currently a lot of topics around legal and you know, security, health related topics that cannot be left to run wild with machine translations. And there's lots of examples currently on Multilingual Magazine or on Slater of examples where, you know, this might have happened, and we need to reel that in and still value sort of translators who have a niche in law, or who have a specialization in law or in healthcare, to still utilize their knowledge and to make sure the quality is, or the security level is at its, you know, where it needs to be. So what is your take on quality and machine translation and AI, and how do you think that's going to change in the year to come?
Yeah, so machine translation will get better, yes or yes. You know, it will increase, but we will have way more content available out there. The production of content will be very high, and there's one new, line of thinking which I think we will start seeing little by little. Is, right now in the last 2-3 years maybe, we have seen a lot of copywriting, right? So how do we copyright? We create localized content, native content for local markets. Okay, so the traditional take on that is to have a briefing about the topic, and then somebody sits there and creates some native content for on this topic. So this is highly demanding. There are few people who really understand how it goes well, and those companies out there who have specialized in that are just way too few to fill the gap for local native content generation. So translation, machine translation is, I have the source text, and instead of translating in human, I use a machine and get it in the native language. For positioning, this might not be the optimum. For SEO, for SEM, this might not be a great take. It's better than nothing, but it's not great version. Now, so how can we now create content, native content on scale? And here I think, it's natural language generation, and this is nothing new. I've been talking about that for a while, or being interested in this for a while. We see GPT-3 models coming up. Text generation is there. It's still nascent, so we see it grow. But I think the main challenge here is to train people, our industry, to train these industries, the translators, to empower them, linguists, to understand how to prompt correctly. Because natural language generation is not, I want this, and you get this wonderful article. Yeah. But it is prompting. You need to write something. The machine will answer with text. You might want to modify the text and get to this. Now, doing this on scale, I think that will be a massive opportunity for our sector and for linguists, individual linguists, LSP, specialized companies like Beluga, to really focus on this creation process and run it on scale for a variety of companies.
I think that's very interesting. I think that there's a lot of different skills that we need to always think about and acquire for the year to come. And, the last few years have been like data science, machine learning, and it's always continuing and always thinking, okay, what's going to be big in the year to come, and what kind of skill sets should I focus on in my continued learning? And as professionals in localization, there's always something new that we can learn and sort of tweak and get better at. So kind of looking in advance and thinking, okay, how can I be an early adopter in this, and how can I prepare for what's to come? So and finally, I think we have to soon go to the Q&A, but we wanted to share some sort of tactical, some tips for how teams can get ready in 2023. So do you have anything off the top of your mind from our conversation that you could share, like maybe, as you said, your 3 T's, or something you'd want to share with the teams, our participants, on how you can be future ready in 2023?
Yeah. So I think for 2023, the most important trend we need to understand is that we are facing a recession. So we are in a recession mode, so a world downturn on economic growth. Now, what are the effects on localization? Well, all these companies who have built up large internal teams might see it half. Why? Because management might not think, like Elon Musk maybe, that they are adding any value, you know? And why shall I have fixed cost if I can have variable costs by outsourcing this stuff? So I think for internal teams, it's key to reposition and to get a very clear understanding about what is smart work. Where do they add a leverage on top of an external layer of translation companies or individual translators? So I think thinking about opportunities, localization, focus, money saving in terms of, you know, being a bridge, connecting local chapters with the localization flow, installing software, smart, doing connection work, internal advocation. This is key for client-side teams, for vendors, for like companies like us. Get a hand on security.
Yeah.
You know, security is you mentioned it before, ISO 27001. For those who are not familiar with it, is a framework for security of information.
Mm-hmm.
We see it popping up in most of our contracts now. So now this comes from the software industry, because software pushes the information problem. Now, we as a vendor, as a supplier, we get the same contract like a software vendor with the same requirements of information security, but with a huge difference. We are not a closed organization, but we are open. We have a hybrid model. We work with freelancers. We work with, you know, with people around the world, with a lot of people. Now, getting them into this framework of information security is a major thing we all have to think about, and it's for procurement issues a real blocker for us to go. Now, and lastly, for content, you know, content writers and translators, you know, ask for empowerment, seek empowerment. Bring yourself in, show that you are, you know, an active role in the organizations you work for. Try to find, you know, the right interlocutors, or whatever, people to talk to,
maybe?
You know, and show your in-country knowledge, which is not only translating a word, but bring you in, upskill yourself, learn about content generation, like prompting. Get your mind open that there's a lot of need for linguists today. It's a high quality job we need, and we need a lot of them, and we do not have enough. So as I have said, I think in the first Smart Log from Home I was part of, you know, this is not over. So translators, we need linguists, we need people working with languages for a long time, and now more than ever. And it's the biggest mistake we could think of, just because of machine translation, that this is over. It's completely the opposite. We need tons of people, highly skilled, understanding and communicative, human empowered people.
And I guess in the year to come, I think we draw back to the conversation, the slide at the beginning about, you know, budgets staying the same. We're in a recession. However, the need for localization and localized content continues to grow. So that's another topic in the industry, is about advocating for localization and finding ways to do this. So one of those ways is to prove that localization is a profit center as opposed to a cost center. And the way to do that is to utilize data. So if you're working in a localization team or you're a freelancer, finding ways and important metrics and measuring those against revenue and showing really the place that localization has and translation has in this world, or in businesses, in order that actually drive sales and revenue, and why it's the really valuable parts of each team. So I think that's very important to talk about as well, especially if there's sort of, we're in times of disruption right now, is not only being, upping your skill set, but also know how to vouch for yourself, for your team, and for your efforts. Whether you're, as I said, like localization manager or translator, like anybody can learn how to use that data to empower themselves, I think. Yeah, perfect. Great. So I think we'll go to the Q&A. Jan, we have quite a few questions in there. Let's start with the question from Vladimir Zadov. How do you deal with sudden spike in the volume? For instance, the team of writers that for an RPG game would suddenly double the volume a month before the release. Not the best thing to happen, but pretty realistic still, judging from my experience. What are the tactics to maintain quality?
Yeah, doubling the volume is, I think in this case you need to act and you need to throw in manpower. But the ideal thing is to train, to train your team, to train your flexibility of the team to cope with these kind of like changes in style. So what we do, for example, is just don't work just with one translator. Even if you have just one need for one, try to do like 2 or 3 to have a backup. Train the system, train long time. And I think this is important. And then you get the quality because people do understand the product, and you keep them in the loop. Yeah, and so it's good for them, it's good for you, and it's sort of scalable. And then, of course, close your eyes, run through this situation, and then do, testing, online testing, because we see only like 10% of all the content we translate really visible to us. It's like 10%, maybe 20% or something like that. So go on testing as soon as possible, run linguistic tests there, and just like get it fixed as good as you can.
Get it. Yeah. Another question we have from Mario Chavez. In selecting translators, are LSPs still using translation tests alone? Are there LSPs that use writing tests to give their clients visibility into the translator's writing capabilities in the target language?
Yeah. So testing is a horrible thing. And a completely bad thing in our industry is that we haven't come over testing the quality of our translators. I think we are missing data. This is something I've seen at LocLunch, and I'm advocating at LocLunch to think about, how can we connect people to software, and how can we get a tracking data, metadata into our profiles that validates my experience through third-party instances. So Smartcat, I work on Smartcat, and Smartcat certifies me that I have been, working on Smartcat for that time on that quality level. Eventually, if I have quality checks, and this can be then presented to an LSP, a different LSP, and it's not about trusting you, but it's about the system, that I can have trust in the system. It's a currency. So I think this is one of the big things we are missing out today. We need to address sooner or later. There's Web3. I'm a big fan of that idea that we can get identity towards our track record, connect people through APIs to the systems they work on, have proof from different platforms, and then sort out this. Can you really write or not? And am I capable to see if you cheat me or not? And this is a nonsense discussion. I think we need to be smarter in that as a whole industry, and can save tons of time and money for everybody involved, and to concentrate on the core thing. Hope this understood.
Yeah. Those are some great tips. We don't have any more questions. Let me just go through here to see. Let's see. Any more questions? I guess we have one more question. It's talking about, I mean, we already touched on this, but how can LSPs be preparing for events such as, you know, for the recession? And do you think the recession will hit our industry hard? I mean, you've mentioned that, you know, the need for translators and localization teams continues to grow, but, you know, do you think that there will be impacts on in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I think the client side will be affected. This is a clearly thing because we still lack like approval from management in most of the companies and visibility of localization efforts. So probably the internal people will be in a stress situation. External vendors, as long as they do business as usual, I think they are at risk as well. We need to invent, we need to adopt new models like you know, the Smartcat opportunities, people management, whatever, copy creation on scale, like all these things we need to move forward. And on the translator side, you know, so you know, demand side, I think we will see most established languages will continue to be there and content will go through. New projects might not be taken right now, but every crisis is an opportunity. So if you have full bags of cash in your bank accounts as a whatever big software company or whatever, now it's a great moment to grab market share.
Yeah.
So when others fold, you can thrive. So I think now it's a very interesting moment again of crisis, where new stuff is born, where there's a lot of need and, you know, back to the roots, getting, you know, we want to survive, so we do something for that. I think that is now what we have to do as an industry and as an LSP, definitely.
I guess it's all about, you know, reimagining how collaborations can happen, how you can work. It's not getting stuck in the, you know, in old structures, breaking the mold, as we said, in order to sort of ride the tide and adjust to what the market actually needs. You know, I think that's been kind of a trend, is, you know, change has been a trend for the last couple of years in terms of the digitalization of the industry, and it continues to be a trend, but now we have to look at it, you know, it has to be part of our DNA, I guess, to be ready for change, to be agile and not, you know, rest on our laurels and think everything will continue as it is, you know, like knowing in your heart that translations is still very important, but how can you tackle those challenges coming forward, and, you know, being empowered with technology and coming together via technology, like Smartcat or, you know, any other TMS, in order to work together and create new teams, perhaps.
And of course, you're not alone in this journey, because, you know, thankfully in the last few years we saw communities really thrive.
Yeah.
And so here comes my hat as a LocLunch founder.
Yeah.
There's always a LocLunch somewhere, digital or local. So this ability to connect and to understand and talk to people and to exchange, you know, this is something I just can encourage everybody. It's so useful. Once a month, connect to LocLunch, to connect to peers, to listen not only to the ones you are like familiar to the typical peer group of CEOs or, you know, LSPs or client side, but, you know, broaden your spectrum, go to a LocLunch or a woman in localization or whatever, and, you know, listen what's happening, and it will enrich your experience, your knowledge, and it will enable you to take decisions correctly.
I totally agree with you. I think that, being in touch with as many people, like, it's part of networking, and, you're opening your eyes, broadening your horizon to see from other perspectives. And there's always an opportunity to gain valuable knowledge and any of these, and, new opportunities always arise when you sort of open yourself to those. So it's great that, that LocLunch is so popular worldwide. And so, from localization professionals of all walks, translators, localization managers. So it's a great way to, acquire knowledge in an informal setting, but always enriching. So it's great that it's continuing so strongly. And any last questions? I think we have to slowly wrap it up. Maybe we can have one quick question from Angeline. She said, do you have any online translation quality testing without spending much on the proofreaders?
Online translation quality testing without spending much on proofreaders. Not that I can think of. So there's no, I mean, quality assurance, spell checkers, and all these stuff is there. I think they are getting way smarter now. So yeah. We have in a localization process, we also see machine translated, like the hybrid version of learning machine translation. So you type and the rest of the sentence is already pulled out there. There's like Grammarly, the likes. So we can expect this technology to increase. So quality in the first hit, and this is again, instead of tap, you hit the nail already in the translation phase. And this is I think what will drive down costs and enable us to make more with less.
Exactly. I think, yeah, and LQA and all these, extra resources and tools tie into it as well. So there's many different tools that exist that don't necessarily require proofreaders, but they can allow you to measure quality and, improve from there. Perfect. So that's our webinar is slowly coming to an end. Jan, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. We've done a lock from home before. About 2 years ago, we talked about the importance of community in the localization world. So I'm happy we were able to connect again today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to share the screen, which has our email addresses and our LinkedIn profile link. So you can definitely connect with Jan or myself via those channels. And if you have any more questions, and we're happy to, add you to our networks and talk to you further if you have any more open questions. And we'll also be sending out an email to those having participated with some valuable insights from our webinar, in addition to our industry report that I mentioned at the beginning, and an article about how you can vouch for localization as a profit center. So thank you so much again, Jan. And hopefully we can have another session soon, or I can join you at LocLunch.
I hope so, Loie. Thanks a lot for having me, and the audience for your patience and your questions.
Yeah, thanks guys for everything. So take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.